Hey, welcome back to Mr. News Art Class. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces today. So this is a drawing that I sketched 2 days ago and I inked it yesterday. And there are some things about it that I'm not completely happy about, but that's exactly why today's video is so important. Just about every day in my art classroom, there's somebody, some student, who gets to a certain point within their drawing that they give up. They say, I messed up, it's terrible, I just can't, I just don't want to finish, I want to start over. And while I totally understand that sentiment, because this drawing that I'm working on today is one of those, I totally understand the sentiment. You run into a problem when you have that attitude. Well, several problems, but the problem I want to focus on today is drawing and painting and creating any kind of art is a long-term process. It's not draw one thing and you're done. There's so much more thought that goes into it, especially at the later stages. And so if in your initial drawing you make little errors that cause you to give up and say, oh, I'm done with this, it's not worth finishing. That happens so often as an artist. It happens with every drawing you ever make, pretty much. And if you never push yourself to those later stages, those whether it's shading or coloring or abstracting the piece or whatever those later stages are, if you never push yourself to those later stages, you never learn how to do those later stages. And then you get stuck in a rut where you're so focused on one little mistake, you don't ever actually create anything that's a finished work of art. So today I'm going to take this drawing, this imperfect drawing. I'll talk about what's imperfect about it and the reasons why I might have stopped and given up, thrown it away and started over. And I'll talk about the reason for those finishing steps and the benefits of doing that. I'll talk about that. Now, first of all, what do I mean when I say this is an imperfect drawing? This is not exactly what I want. Here, well, there's a few things right away that I'm looking at that just stand out as being awkward or not quite accurate. Number one is the shape and size of this tail. I think this should be brought in a little bit more here, and I think the tail, I should be seeing it less this way and more this way, more sideways, if that makes sense. There should be more overlapping of these feathers and see less of the ones that are farther away. And also just in general, I think this whole tail area needs to be tapered. I think the body should be not quite as long. Then the second thing that I'm seeing with this drawing that's less than ideal is the difference between the texture that I added into the branch versus the lack of texture that I added in the bird. Now, I absolutely love the way that I inked in the branch here. I think adding these little, and for this I used this, I never get the name of this right, the Gassenfude, I don't know how you say it, but it's the Copic brush tip pen that I'll leave a link down in the description if you care. It's really awesome for getting these natural textures. And I used it up here too, but here I was trying to get much smoother, softer lines. And the contrast between those two is too much. I think, especially because feathers on this bird should have texture to them. So anyway, I'm gonna work with that and see if I can add in texture with my colors and take it from there. So why is it important for me to actually do this? Why shouldn't I throw this away, redraw it, redraw the bird, add the texture in that I was looking for. Well, I watched a video recently that was geared towards high school graduates that want to be artists and giving them advice. And one of the people in that video described it this way. They said, don't worry about redoing what you've already done. Don't try to make do the best you can on what you're working on right now. And then when you're done with that, move on and make the next thing better. Don't go back and redo the first thing. Go back and make the next thing better. And the way that I word that in my classroom is we need to be forward thinking, not backwards thinking. All the time I tell my students, especially in a classroom setting, we only have a certain amount of time. So we want to use that time as wisely as possible. If we throw something away and start over, then we've wasted a bunch of time. And not to mention materials. But also, just what I'm doing here in this picture is figuring out how I'm going to add colors in and add shading. And you notice on that branch, I've used several different colors, and here on the bird, I'm also using several different colors, and how I'm blending those colors and using those colors to create textures, and all of that comes together to be a part of the learning process as well as a part of the creative process. And if you stop too soon, then you miss all that. Now, this, isn't in a classroom setting. This is just me making art for myself. And, when you're creating something for yourself, you always have to, answer the age-old question of why. Why am I doing this? And, for me as an artist, part of the reason why I create art on my own is because I enjoy it. Part of it is because I like having a finished product that I can show to people. But one of the biggest reasons why I like to make art for myself is simply the fact that I learn every time I make something. I'm learning something new. I'm learning something about color blending. I'm learning something about how to see things or whatever. And you don't learn any of those things if you stop and throw it away. So just be forward thinking. When you think you've made a mistake, take it on to completion. Do the best you can with what you've got. And my advice is make the next piece better based on what you learn from the one you're working on today.